Hello, hello, hello! We have returned to once again talk about somebody that has been highly requested. Today we are talking about one of the most important figures to women's wrestling, but also one of the worst human beings to ever touch wrestling. Hardbody Harrison was like the goodwill version of the fabulous Moolah. Bro, I kid you not, there's so many articles that are just paragraphs long of things this woman has done, like wrongfully in the wrestling industry, and there's still a ton of people that try to defend her. And I don't understand that. But she did this for the industry. She did that for the industry. I don't care. But anyways, let's go ahead and let's dive into the fabulous Moolah, and let's start with the cage match comments as we always do. And I'm gonna go ahead and plug it here because I'm shameless and I don't care. Follow me on Twitter, join the Discord. Y'all know what it is. Links in the description. Anyways, let's go ahead and log back in. Hey, that's a familiar name. Nolan Green. He was on the Hardbody Harrison video. Let's go ahead. He wrote, yes, she was very important to women's wrestling, but she was a horrible person. She treated her students in order for them to get into wrestling because she was the only one to train them. Plus, they lied about her holding the women's title for 28 years, and she still won it in the Attitude Era for no reason. At least Mae Young was funny for all the wrong reasons. Moolah added nothing to the Attitude Era and sent women's wrestling back 30 years when she won the title from Wendy Richter as Spider Lady. Horrible. And then right underneath Nolan Green, we got from What Up, horrible person. Sold women out to men in order for them to keep being trained by her. Absolutely horrible. I don't even care if you're a good in-ring worker if you're this horrible of a person. She faced no repercussions for what she did. So for that, she is an absolute zero. I'd give her a negative if possible. She's like the female Jimmy Snuka of wrestling. Absolutely no punishment for her horrible acts of human trafficking. Just like Snuka faced no punishment for murder. Since Vince even tried to cover up the murder, I'm sure he tried to help cover this up as well. Jesus Christ, bro. Master of the Match Guide 99 wrote the next book of the Bible. As a wrestler, a clear 9 or 10. But as a person, a negative 10. She was a very poor excuse for a wrestling mentor, as she would pimp out, sell, and abuse any women who wanted to step in the ring while charging them exorbitant fees, having them practice in a 100-degree barn with no AC, and even would have them shoot fight rather than just spar, all for what seemed to be her own enjoyment. Also, her so-called 28-year reign was actually interrupted 4 times, but WWE was so worried about her image that they always lied and ignored her losses and acted like she could do no wrong. Moolah may have acted like a woman who was concerned with wrestling and helping women's wrestling be noticed, but the truth was that she was the only woman who mattered for far longer than required and used her leverage to always get whatever she wanted and get away with whatever she could. I have no complaints about her wrestling acumen, but her past is something that makes me wonder why WWE never thought about taking a look at her behind the scenes. Cough, cough, Vince McMahon scandal. But before we get too crazy, we gotta see what Zach22 thinks about the fabulous Moolah. So, she was allegedly scum, but let's talk about the wrestling. Yeah, she was simply not very good at all and was consistently pushed down your throat as the most legendary, the greatest women's wrestler ever, in a world with 90s Joshi wrestling. She just pisses me off, to be honest. People giving 10s really confuses me. She was simply a bad wrestler and a bad person who did nothing to help the women's wrestling scene. Seen some people say that her wrestling was a product of its time, but that's the time of Billy Robinson, the time of Mark Rocco, The Destroyer, Nick Bockwinkel, so many greats who could actually work. Bro, I kid you not, I have never seen so much pure hatred in one comment section. It just doesn't stop, bro. It keeps oh my god. I see a couple high ratings and it kind of makes me question the morality of those individuals. This was someone who used her platform of power to manipulate people both sexually and financially, forcing her trainees to indulge in acts of sex trafficking just to cover the funds needed to train. She would also force the women that she would train to have sex with both promoters and male wrestlers. Without going to Moolah for training, as a woman, you probably wouldn't have found yourself anywhere in the wrestling business. There were very few folks that would actually train women's wrestlers back in that time, which is why she's always credited as somebody that extremely advanced women's wrestling, not only with her own accomplishments, but training other women's wrestlers. She would also make it mandatory for every woman that she trained to work at a restaurant. While not necessarily illegal, it's a little scummy to do. They come in there for wrestling, shorty, not there to be cashiers or being a waitress handing out hoagies and hot dogs. One instance of her being a terrible human being was her treatment of Sandy Parker. She was openly lesbian, but the fabulous Moolah did not take too kindly to this. While some may excuse it as a product of its time, it's not really time-based on being a good person and accepting human beings for who they are. It's also alleged that the fabulous Moolah didn't even train the trainees at all. all. Rather, she just took credit for other people's work. She didn't even pay the people that were training the new trainees. Bro, the least you could do was at least pay the people that were doing the work for you, especially seeing as the price you charged those women to train for. Those same women that were being trained were then forced out in bulk to wrestling promoters for, deeds. However, some people like Shane Douglas and Jerry Lawler defend her and say that she, never did anything like that. Meanwhile, someone she actually trained, Princess Victoria, said that she never pimped out any women, but she did take money from them. She never really cared about women's wrestling. She only cared about her own wrestling image. The only reason she cared about women's wrestling was to be the face of women's wrestling. Women's wrestling wasn't allowed to succeed in her own eyes without her own accomplishments. She used the amazing thing known as backstage politics, sarcasm, to politic her way to always being involved in every single big moment early on in women's wrestling history. I feel like I'm Kendrick Lamar in the final verse of Meet the Grams, bro. You lied about this. You lied about that. You lied about... Yeah. It's insane to see how deep this goes, because this is hundreds of women that have been affected by her and her only. Countless women have came out, but no, they're all lying. They're all lying. They're not telling a bit of truth. Moolah would never. Did you know she was women's champion for 28 years? That's how all the defenses of her go. It'll be someone basically denying that she did anything and then immediately following that naming an accomplishment of hers. Basically saying she could have never done anybody wrong or done anything illegal because she did this for women's wrestling. She did this. She had this accomplishment. She won this title on this day. An example of her being a narcissistic egomaniac was the instance of the original Montreal Screwjob with Wendy Richter. Wrestled under a mask to beat her just because she couldn't stand anybody else having the spotlight. She also didn't care if you got injured because, back to Princess Victoria, she stated in this interview that my neck was broken in the ring and I was basically thrown out with no medical attention and very little to my name. I am now fully disabled, sometimes having to use a wheelchair due to the lack of medical attention. I have had multiple concussions and have donated my brain for a future lawsuit to prove that we wrestlers have been misused by WWE for many, many years. I want nothing to do with the WWE and will not, even if invited, to allow my name to be in their so-called Hall of Fame. Imagine being so ruthless that you do not care that one of your wrestlers is severely injured. Also, wrestlers who have worked with Moolah have said that she would intentionally try to hurt you in the ring. So if she's intentionally trying to hurt people in front of live audiences, what do you think she was doing if she was actually training people behind closed doors? Thankfully, after what we've learned in this video, she probably didn't train anybody, which, is probably for the better. Imagine being one of the trainers that trained people for Moolah and then seeing all of your credit just be stolen by her. It's pretty safe to say that you can come to the conclusion that she was the definition of a narcissist. While you have to be a narcissist to succeed in professional wrestling, that's just a fact, there is a line that has to be drawn somewhere. Backstage politics is something that everybody uses, but there comes a time where it's just too much. Is there really a reason that you need to bury people for 28 years? Could you really not put anybody over within those 28 years? That's almost 3 decades, bro. Also, little bit of tidbit for, context. The people that trained her were also into this little sexual favors for, bookers and stuff. It all comes full circle, doesn't it? However, she took it to another level, not only sexually extorting people, but also financially extorting people, as we've alluded to before. I understand times were different, but I don't understand how people just didn't take anybody seriously whenever they said something about Moolah. It shows just how powerful backstage politics can be, and when you have a certain level of power in the industry, you almost can't be stopped. We've seen this from people like, of course, Vince McMahon. We've seen it from people even like Alberto Del Rio, who's getting a video soon, as well as AAA, and the likes of Ian Rotten and Rob Feinstein. In their own minds, as well as the minds of others, they are on this pedestal. It's like this untouchable grounds where they feel like they can do whatever they want and get away with whatever they want. As corny as it is, with great power comes even greater responsibility. This is a woman who I can barely consider a human being that has a rap sheet 2 miles long. It's almost impossible to cover everything she's done in only one video. The entirety of professional wrestling is just this never-ending rabbit hole, and when you think you've found the worst, you find worse. By the way, this is still someone that is technically recognized by WWE to this day and has her own page on the website. I'm not even somebody that's gonna go out there and defend Chris Benoit, but bro, we gotta keep it fair Fabulous Moolah was just as bad. This is somebody that would continue to steal the spotlight from everybody else and would come back sporadically. This is someone that would continue to memorialize and keep engraving in history despite the shit that she had done. It's sickening, all the stuff that she had done and got away with, and I would suggest watching the Dark Side of the Ring episode if you want a more in-depth analysis. She did a lot of stuff that I legit cannot talk about on YouTube. As I said earlier, professional wrestling is like a rabbit hole, and we're only at the surface right now. While this may be the end of the Fabulous Moolah saga, we're not done uncovering the depravity that lies beneath the professional wrestling surface. There's countless people that still need to be exposed, and there's countless people that still need to be talked about. The next video will be on Herb Abrams, and that'll be a lot more in-depth because there's a lot less people that know about Herb Abrams in comparison to the Fabulous Moolah. But as for right now, I'm gonna end the video here. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you enjoy sarcastic people talking about their opinions on wrestling, even though they don't matter at all. As I said earlier, follow me on Twitter and join the Discord server. The links and whatever, they'll be in the description and the pinned comment. And yeah, that's gonna be all for me. Y'all stay safe. God bless.